Let's take the greatest of all time. If Adam Vinatieri shanks that field goal.
On the line, the kick is away. It is good.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
What are we really talking about? If the tuck rule is not.
It is an incomplete pass.
Well, there's no doubt his arm was going forward.
Sure, but he had held up.
I think it's safe to say that this will be talked about quite a bit.
You think?
A lot of those things are happens because of so many factors that plays.
Play clock at 5. Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler.
I can't believe the call. You've got Marshawn Lynch in the backfield. You've got a guy that's been borderline unstoppable in this.
And so here we go again, back with another one. Welcome to the Dark Times channel. And this isn't going to be one of my longer videos, but I came across this interview with Cam Newton in which he was sitting down with Stephen A. Smith, Shannon Sharp, Mad Dog Russo, and of course Molly Corum. And they were drilling him a little bit. They were asking him about his comments that he made early on this year in regards to the comments that he made about San Francisco quarterback Brock Purdy.
The fresh hat, we're into it. All right, let's dive into this because you're making a lot of noise with this Purdy game manager take. Do you trust him on a game-winning drive in the Super Bowl?
I trust his resources.
Good answer.
I trust Debo. I trust George Kittle. I trust Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk. I trust those guys.
And so absolutely, I completely 100% agree with Cam Newton on this one. And a lot of people are saying that Cam Newton is salty. And that may be the case. But if anybody has a right to be salty, a little bit salty, it's Cam Newton. Because throughout their entire time when Cam Newton was in the NFL, he didn't have one receiver even close to the level of receivers that San Francisco has. Not one. The only receiver that he had on his team was a tight end. That was Greg Olsen. And Greg Olsen was a darn good tight end. But outside of that, he was throwing to the likes of Kelvin Benjamin. I believe Kelvin Benjamin was probably his best receiver and was known to drop passes. And so Cam Newton has the right to be salty. They never really surrounded him with good offensive talent. And just because he's salty doesn't mean he's incorrect. As of right now, Brock Purdy is a game manager. There's talent up and down that roster. And that's not a bad thing, because to win in the NFL, it takes more than one person to win a game. It's probably one of the most collectively played games in all of sports. All 53 men on that roster are responsible for wins and losses.
You know, going into that locker room, going into that huddle, it's 11 guys that needs to do one job, not one guy trying to do 11 jobs.
Correct.
And that's why the whole GOAT conversation when it comes to football, in my opinion, is ridiculous. And we never heard about a GOAT conversation until Tom Brady. Of all the different great names that we had played the game of football, nobody was ever talking about a GOAT until Tom Brady. And it's a ridiculous thing to say. If you want to call him the greatest quarterback of all time, okay, I can dig it. But when we're talking about the greatest football player of all time, he's nowhere close. Not even close. You're talking about somebody that has to have some of the biggest, strongest men in the world block for him. Somebody that has to have some of the fastest and best pass catchers in the world catch for him. Somebody that has to have some of the fastest, some of the toughest, some of the meanest running backs run for him to be able to score. And then on top of that, he's got to have a defense that can stop the other team. And so you can't have a greatest of all time when it comes to football. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. There's too many different factors that goes into winning when it comes to football. Unlike basketball, you can have a dominant player that can affect the outcome on both ends on the floor. That's why when you had a Michael Jordan, who was making his impact on the offensive end as well on the defensive end, was considered the best player of all time. Like a LeBron James in his prime, who was probably the best player on both ends. These are individuals that we consider GOATs. Even in hockey, what do we have? Wayne Gretzky, somebody else that's considered one of the greatest of all time. And he plays both ways. You're talking about somebody that has a major impact on the outcome of a game, not just on one side. And even in baseball to some degree. When you talk about the greatest of all time, what's the name that always comes up? Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth was the modern day Ohtani, somebody who was going to pitch on an elite level. And then we're talking about somebody who was going to knock it out of the park on an elite level. And then baseball is a low scoring game. So you could have somebody hit 2 home runs like Babe Ruth and the score is 2-0. So we're talking about a major impact on the game. Football's a whole different animal. That's why I always say you can never have a GOAT when it comes to the game of football. If you want to go position by position, yeah, you can do that. Tom Brady's got the most accolades. He's got the most passing yards. He's got a lot of records. And so if people want to call him the greatest quarterback of all time, that's fair. And so I definitely agree with Cam Newton on this one. I think he's right on the money. But go ahead and drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know how y'all feel on this one. And as usual, peace and chaos.